Welcome to MTM Travel, where Mark just interrupted our recording to check in for his Southwest flight 24 hours out, and he's still got B19.
Yeah, I hate it so much. I can't wait for seats. I avoid flying Southwest solely because of this. Especially like going out, it's not as bad. Usually, you're not flying like early in the morning or whatever, or you're kind of doing your normal routine, so you can just set like an alarm and go. But if I'm flying home and if it's like a 7 or 8 a.m. flight that I need to check into, I hate having to get up on vacation just to do that or like set a reminder. I don't want to do anything on my trip. Like I don't want to focus on picking a seat or picking a slot or what it's just annoying. I know you can pay the 15 or 20 bucks or whatever it is now. They keep jacking up the price for that, but that's just an included fee, like an added fee. So it defeats the purpose. I don't know. I hate it.
I wonder, everybody out there, so was it B19 or B16? Right in there,
B
right?
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're like mid Bs, and
Yeah.
I haven't
It's
been
good.
mid Bs by myself. I would be a little worried about that personally. I'd be
No.
like,
No, no, no. I think you don't get middle seats till like C, and that would be like mid C's. Like if you're the end of C, I think you start getting stuck middle because a lot of people in the A's and B's are sitting together, so it's one person next to another taking middle. Late B's I would get a little bit nervous, like in the 50s, stuff like that. But yeah, early B's, you'll have to go to the back of the plane, which is kind of stinks. Or what I do is I pick the devil I know. So when I walk in, I'm looking for like a little old lady sitting in the middle next to her husband that's towards the front of the plane that I can just grab the aisle. So first one I see that I think, okay, this gives me the space I need, I plop down there because if you just pick an open aisle seat or window seat or whatever, you don't know what's going to sit next to you, and it can be rough.
yeah, I mean, but there's always that hope for the empty middle seat too.
Yeah.
So I guess you have to like do recon to see how full the flight is. And I always hated that because when I'm on Southwest, I'm just obsessed the entire boarding time to see if somebody's going to sit in the middle seat. Like that, I don't know
Yeah.
why.
Are you coming
I
here?
guess it
Are you
passes
coming
the
here?
time. I mean, it passes the time. That's the way I look at it. It's like it gives me something to do. So I don't actually hate it. Like instead of because I'm going to be on my phone watching a video for the next 4 hours or 5 hours. Like I can just sit there and people watch and obsess over whether somebody's going to sit next to me or not. But it's like, it's funny as you walk down the aisle, you do see people doing the tricks to kind of like deter you, whether it's the bag or we talked about on 20-minute travel, the people pretending to be vloggers or whatever it is,
Yeah.
just to do whatever you can to do it. And it's funny as you walk down, you see these little skits happening in front of you as people, want to make it unattractive to you.
Oh, and they're all looking at you too, and you're like, "Oh, are they judging me? Do they want me to sit here? Do they not want me to sit here?" It's too stressful. It's stupid. I hate it. I do hope Southwest, when they do the seating, they still keep the same type of boarding process because I do like that it's not just like gate lights everywhere. At least everybody knows. Okay, B 1 through 30, I gotta go line up or whatever. So I think they could still do that with having seats. They just like seat here to here, get in a line over here, or something along those lines. So I hope they still use those monitors and everything they have set up. But I'm definitely looking glad to it. The funniest thing is when you go to check in, they're like, "Would you like to upgrade your flight?" I'm like, "To what? Like every seat is the same." The business class never made sense to me because you get what? You get to get board a little bit earlier and you get one free drink. Who cares? Southwest doesn't charge for the first drink most of the time anyway.
Well, I didn't know that, but exit row, Mark, you got exit row. And that's not even guaranteed with the business select. So when I did the trip with Hilton and to Memphis and Southwest, they bought me business select. So it was the first time I ever had it because I've never paid for it myself because I don't see the value there. And I would get like, I think A6 to A8 or something like that. But even then I wasn't guaranteed the exit row because the people A1 through 7 who had higher status could have gotten that. They all run to the front of the plane, which is super interesting to me, like the first few rows. And then the other quirky thing about Southwest that I've noticed, and this isn't unique to me, but you end up with 20 people with wheelchairs all trying to pre-board because they want to get better seats. And even on one of my flights to Memphis, one of the wheelchair people tried to go in the exit row and had been told no by the flight attendant because they were trying to, he's like, the person, she was telling me the person just walked fine. He took the wheelchair on the plane, got up, tried to walk over to the exit row. And she's like, no, you're not allowed in the exit row. People are so quirky. That's why I love to travel, because it's all of us at our absolute worst. It's just a mess, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, 20 people get on the plane in a wheelchair and like four leave the plane in a wheelchair. Like that's how you know that it's just like a scammy type of setup that they're doing. And I one time, I was flying Delta business over to Amsterdam and I asked the guy, I'm like, hey, can I board before everybody gets on? I want to write about this. This was 2018, I think. And I'm like, I want to write about this. I want to take some pictures before the plane is, full or whatever. And he didn't know where I was sitting. And he's like, oh, just when I call for people that need more time, just walk with a limp and get on. And I'm like,
Yeah, why can't you just say,
I'm
just
like,
come up to me and get on? Why do you have to sell it?
yeah. Yeah, I don't know, but I'm like, I have business, so I'm gonna be boarding at that time anyway, for the most part. So I don't like if I was in economy, yeah, okay, maybe that helps me out a bit, but doesn't help me take pictures in business class. There's gonna be 4 or 5, 10 people ahead of me that are gonna be in there. I just didn't want them to have to be in the photo. But whatever. I hate writing airline reviews because it's the worst place to try to take pictures of things. The lighting's always terrible. People are looking at you weird. You're crammed in there with other people. I don't even write airline reviews anymore because it's just not worth the hassle.
Yeah, I think it's better for the video medium, and there's people on YouTube and elsewhere that just do such a phenomenal job of it, and they have it figured out how to film and how to work with the crews. And I mean, there's people with millions of followers, but they've done such a good job at kind of wearing that down to when you're writing a blog post with some pictures. I don't think that that does well. And then, you have Lucky at 1 Mile at a Time, who I think writes the creme de la creme of those types of things, and the amount of detail and it's just are you going to be able to provide
Hours.
more
Yeah.
nuance and stuff like that? So it's interesting if it's like very unique product, like an airline nobody's ever flown or something like that. I could see writing it up, but for the normal stuff, like there's going to be better YouTube videos, there's going to be better write ups, and then you just have to decide where you're better creating content. And it's certainly for both of us is not writing reviews on on our flights. And I like that. I like now, I used to take pictures of everything, and I used to write it up. And then there was a period of time where I would still take pictures of everything and to talk about or whatever, and I'll still do that. In fact, now I film a lot of stuff for us to talk about on this show and elsewhere, but it's a little different filming b-roll compared to filming an entire vlog. But I like to enjoy it for myself, and I don't find it enjoyable if I'm having to document everything. And what's really cool is those YouTube vloggers and stuff, they love that, where I just want to be on my flight. And man, I'm usually so jet lagged or tired, or I just don't want to be on, if that's if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Well, behind the scenes a bit, reviews take the longest to write, whether it's hotel, plane, whatever, and they usually do, the worst, unless you are like getting really good Google SEO, and even then, it has to be a property or a plane that people are searching often. You're just not going to get the return on, value on the time. So you have to really enjoy it. And I think Lucky's one of those people that really enjoys it. He probably also gets some good SEO juice because he's written so many of them, but like the payoff just isn't there. Could take 3 to 4 hours to write a full length review, unless something like your Atlanta story where just craziness happened. It just isn't going to go that way. It's going to get. Sometimes I've spent 3 hours doing a review and it gets like 200 views, which makes you like $3. Like it just isn't. It's just not worth it. So I've gotten to the point where I don't, unless it's something really unique. Like I threw in on a couple, like the Waldorf Astoria in Maui. I wrote that up because I think that was worthwhile. The Hana I helped write up with Mark Jackson, who's been on the show before, and like we did a combo thing, and I think those are properties that are useful to people. But like the run of the mills, just kind of like, oh, downtown New York, unless you're staying at the best hotel in New York, like I'm not going to write up that review because it just isn't going to do anything.
Yeah, and I like to get content more from podcasts and from videos and stuff. So that's more of where I'm at today, because I'd rather see the video than see 10 pictures or 20 pictures of something. Although, again, I think Lucky does a good job. And this isn't on our rundown, but we should talk about this. You brought up my Atlantis post, and when you're traveling and you're criticizing things, it can be very nerve-wracking, I would say. Now, we all, we live in the US. If you go into a random Hampton Inn like Jay Leno, did you see Jay Leno? I'm like way all over the place here, but did you see he stayed at a Hampton Inn and then he fell down a hill next to it? It's the craziest thing.
No way that all that happened from that. Like his fingers busted up, his face is all smashed. I don't think that's what happened, but why is Jay Leno staying at a Hampton Inn? Like that's the number one red flag.
Yeah, and there was so many like Twitter memes about Jay Leno and the Hampton Inn, and what actually happened, him gambling debts or whatever, which I don't think he has. I think he has plenty of
he has like
of money,
400 cars he can get out of it, I'm sure.
So back to Lucky and criticizing things. In Atlantis, I'm writing there. You get a lot of pressure from employees, and when something goes like high up. For example, at Atlantis, it went all the way to the general manager, and that's not the country or anything or the government, but you start to feel uncomfortable. And I guess Lucky recently criticized the airport in Cairo International Airport, and he spent 4 hours there. I didn't read a lot about this, and I didn't have this on our rundown, but I think it's worth mentioning. And so basically, the government attacked him. They declared war on him. They not only released 7 minutes worth of surveillance footage of him around the airport, saying that he was enjoying himself. So like they cherry picked 7 minutes of the 4 hours he was there, and then released.
Awesome.
This is the government of Egypt. But anyway,
Yeah.
he wrote a whole article about how he has no plans to return to Egypt. How everything he talks about, and I think this is really important. What I've done, I've been out in the public for so long, and I think you're exactly the same. Is when I talk about something that's a bad experience, I'm very detailed in making sure I'm accurate, because I know that if I'm inaccurate with anything, if I embellish anything, that they can come back and get me. And Lucky has been the same way, and that's why he has a reputation. And so he did all this, and the government is attacking him, and now he's saying he's not comfortable ever going back to Egypt. So that's a crazy story. Huge consequences just for criticizing an airport that's pretty. I don't know. Most people don't say it's the best. I've never been there, but
Yeah.
overreaction.
That's why I don't ever post anything while I'm on said trip or in said hotel or whatever. Like I don't even really want to post on Twitter or anything when you're doing it, like maybe the next day or after you leave or whatever, unless an immediate interference or immediate response from social media team or somebody out there would help you, assist you, because it's like needed at that point. I'm gonna wait because and we've also talked about, like, you don't want people knowing where you are because they might show up or call your room or prank you or whatever it be. It's a weird world we live in. But yeah, I always wait a little bit. But yeah, if you write it up even when you're home, then you can never go back there at some point if it goes really big. I remember when Zoe wrote a article for us when she was stranded on Tonga for a year and a half or whatever, during the pandemic. Which, another thing that I don't understand how it didn't ever go like gangbusters. We have this woman writing from a place she's stranded in during COVID times, that she went on a vacation and just like ended up living there. It's the most insane, interesting story I've ever seen in the travel realm, and it never really went anywhere, which is just crazy. I mean, CNN ended up picking it up like 18 months after we had her write a whole bunch of stuff. But it's just funny how some things hit and some things don't. She wrote about like places she didn't, 5 worst places she's been or whatever, and one was India. And do you remember India Twitter like just blowing up when they found it and commenting in thread after thread after thread on that? It was just insane.
Yeah, it's tough because you have to balance the line. When you have more than 5 people looking at your stuff, you really have to balance a line between, you're going to make people angry, and then to get the attention of that anger. Lucky brings up a point, is of a huge violation of his privacy to post the surveillance footage of him walking around the airport. I mean,
I don't know
if you think about this,
I mean,
no, but
he's in public. He's in public space. Like you have no. If somebody filmed you, it's the same thing. They could post it. Like, I don't know. It's
for sure.
Is it an overreach? Yes. Should they have not done it? Yes. But I wouldn't call it an invasion. Like, you're in a public space.
Fair enough. But if we
If
just
he was
look
in
at
the
the
dumper.
context of this, this is a travel blogger who criticizes an airport, and then the government of the entire country takes the surveillance thing and attacks him publicly for it.
It's crazy.
This is
100%.
like, I just imagine being him and taking that on. That would be very, very difficult. And I've taken on similar situations. The Bahamas was a very difficult situation where I had an employee declare all out war on me, and I had to almost declare all out war back on her. And the amount of energy that went back and forth really stunk, but I had the truth on my side and I was right. And you're going viral, and that went viral, and you're going to potentially lose people their jobs, and you have personal feelings involved because maybe you've been disrespected or you're on vacation and you're trying to balance the professional because you've traveled a lot and you understand things go wrong, and you're trying to just resolve something, and you don't want to put something out there that's going to get somebody in trouble if they can resolve it. And it's really difficult. And but it's a good job, so I guess we'll have to do it.
Yeah, and then you got the trolls that jump in and say, "Oh, you're just complaining because you're a blogger." Oh, should we talk about American Airlines, my story now? Can I embellish here for a couple minutes of how it took me 6 hours to book a flight to California?
Sure. You got to follow up with the response and everything?
Yeah, so I ended up calling back and got a lady on the phone and kind of went through it with her again, read off all the gift card numbers one more time, and she went back to ticketing. And I think she actually like sat on the phone with ticketing or something because she's like, "Oh, they are showing all zeros," but somehow was able to get it to still push through. So I guess they weren't really zero. I don't know what she did. She didn't explain it, but it was like another hour on the hold, back and forth. And then she said, "Okay, you should get an email, in a couple hours that shows it ticketed. But if you don't by 5 p.m., call back." And I know, of course, I never got an email. And I pulled up my account and it showed the flight and it shows as ticketed. I still don't trust it. I feel like I'm going to show up to the airport and they're going to be like, "I don't know what we have on you." Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, the price is different. It's all over the place. I don't know how. I think they just like brute forced it in finally. You have to fill out a online form. They can't give you any compensation on the phone. You have to go to like their relations department. So I said, "Hey, just trying to book a flight to California. It took me 6 hours of my time. It was an AA's problem, their issue with, their back end, whatever the problem is, had nothing to do with me, but it cost me 6 hours to book a simple flight to the other side of the country. Is there anything you can do?" And she came back and said, "Here's 2,500 miles."
Oh man, I thought that when you said 25, I thought 25,000.
That's what I was
2,500
expecting.
miles. Yeah.
I'm like, 25,000 is what I was hoping for. 10,000, I think, is the bare minimum. So I went back and said, "Really? 2,500 miles? You think that's worth 6 hours of my time?" I don't know. That just seems a bit low. So she comes back and says, "Here's another 2,500."
So clearly she's only authorized. I've had this with Amazon where they're
Yeah.
authorized a certain much. And I've actually had an agent, because I pushed back, give me two of credits that, because they're like, I can only give you $10 credit or whatever it is, but I'll give you
Yeah.
two of them. So I wonder if that's the case, like anything over 25 and they have to document it in some, but they can do it multiple times.
Yeah. Well, then just do it like 4 times. Be like, "Here you go. Oh, sorry. Here's another one. Oh, my bad. Here's." But yeah, it's just like, and so that's one thing I'll say Delta does really well whenever I have a problem, and it's rare, but if I reach out, like, they usually give me more than I had kind of expected, in Sky Miles. And it's like, I know this currency has a cost to them, but not really. Like, it doesn't have a financial cost. When you use it, yes, they miss out on revenue that they could have gotten some other way. You didn't technically earn it, but it's like, it's kind of like a restaurant comping you food. There's a cost, but it's nowhere near the price that they comped. Don't be so cheap.
Yeah, indeed. Don't be so cheap. I had, thinking about that story, I did think of a suggestion for people if you're ever in this scenario with AA, based on my previous experiences and calls and just thinking back what happened with you, is you can insist that the agent on the phone gets ticketing on the phone and that they ticket it while you're on the phone. And if you're running through these things where you're getting something ticketed and then it's getting canceled or there's other issues, just say, I know, just, it's always okay to acknowledge that the call is being recorded, because it's just a reminder to the agent that they have to do it. It's just say, "I understand this call is being recorded. I've been through some issues and this has been really frustrating. I would like for you to stay on the line with ticketing and help me to make sure this gets ticketed properly. I'm asking you to stay on the line with me and to facilitate this." Because at that point, you don't have to say it's recorded or not, but you're putting it out there on the call that if it ever was listened to. And in my experience, I've only had call centers ever listen to calls twice, but I've used that line so many times and it helps so much, because you're holding them accountable. You're saying, "Hey," and again, I worked in a call center. I know exactly how the mindset works. And so you're just reminding them, "I'm going to hold you accountable." But yeah, so that's my tip for that, because I've had that so many times with the stupid ticketing people canceling a booking.
Yeah, and that's one hand doesn't know what the other's doing. Like, you think that would just be, you wish that the person that you're talking to had the ability to process the ticket. I feel like there's many airlines that can do that for whatever reason. AA keeps it separate and it makes it more difficult than it probably needs to be. I don't know. I mean, how much better is it when you call in and you ask something? They're like, "Oh yeah, I put it in there. You're all set. Here's your ticketing number." Like, it's just so much better.
For sure. I have an airline thing I wanted to ask you about and put this out there for the people out there, what they would do. So I'm going to Alani in January, and for my flight out there, I booked with United Travel Bank. That was the best deal, actually, but also trying to use my travel bank, so it's always good. It's like a 6 a.m. flight, Vegas to LA, quick connection in LA onto Honolulu. So not direct, but it does good. I can use my travel bank. But coming back, I want to do the direct, I think, because I think coming back is
Hawaiian.
more of a pain. Hawaiian, yeah. So I'm looking at what this is, and the cash price is about $300 for the one-way flight. That's about the cash price. It's obviously 20,000 Hawaiian miles for the flight. And so I was like, all right, well, I could use the Hawaiian miles. And so here's my whole thing. This is so stupid. I have 450,000 Alaska miles now because I transferred Amex to Hawaiian with a 20% bonus over to Alaska. And now I'm like hesitant to use those. I'm like, should I transfer
Yeah,
new American Express points in order to get this? Like, how stupid is that mentality? I don't get it.
yeah. Because once they're Alaska miles, you think they're worth more. And if you move them back to Hawaiian, your brain's telling you you just devalued them by moving them back to Hawaiian. But if you move membership rewards over, you're going to be doing it at a lower rate than you would have because you got a transfer bonus when you moved them to to Hawaiian onto Alaska. So it's best to use Alaska, or well, you can't. It's not business, so you can't use the Biz Platinum. I was gonna say you could do that, but that's not your selected airline unless you're just a really weirdo and you had Hawaiian for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird, these mental gymnastics that we play. But I was thinking long term, at some point we won't be able to go Hawaiian to Alaska, or
Yeah.
American Express to Hawaiian and then to Alaska. And so it's like, what do I want for my balance in the future, for Japan business class flights, for other things? Do I want to take that 60K now, or do I just want to take it from Amex, because I know that I won't be able to do that in the future? I won't. We know this is going to go away at some point.
But you could
That's the
just
real
move 60.
question.
You could move 60K over right now. It's no real different between the two. Like you're saying, because they're
Yeah.
already there, I want to keep them there. But you could just transfer back, and then if you get to that, like let's say you sign up for a Bank of America card in the next couple months get Alaska miles, then you don't need to transfer. So I would pull from Alaska, move it to Hawaiian, book that way, because you still know that you can move that 60K over if you want to down the road. We should kind of know when it's going to happen. You can decide at that point, but you might be open up. Like, let's say you get one of those mailers for 100K Alaska miles, and then you don't need to do it. So I would just, that's what I would do, and delay the decision making, essentially.
So that's what I've settled on, because it is the right answer, but it doesn't mean that the emotions aren't different. And,
Shawn agrees with me.
that I don't
Oh my
want-
gosh.
No, I mean, that's the right answer. I don't think that there's any other answer that's the right answer, is that I should have a date where we won't be able to do this anymore. And at that point, I can decide if I want to reimburse myself for the 60K that I took. Why do it now unless I've absolutely determined that I need that amount? And, it's weird, because when I did the 450,000, I thought, all right, that was more than I wanted to do. I was like, all right, let's just do more. And now here I am, like, wishing I had done more than that. It's dumb stuff. And,
Yeah.
it's just the way our minds work, I guess.
Well, I even like if I have miles in an airline program, I'm more likely to use those first versus my transferable currency. Even if it's a little bit more, like let's say I could transfer 25 MRs to this, flight place or this airline, but I have 30K sitting over here in life miles that will book the same flight. I'm just going to use the life miles because it keeps my transferable currency transferable. So I'm even going that way. Like if it's already in, I think anything that's in a program that's not a hotel, like any airline program that have miles, that's a stranded mile in my brain until I use it, even if I use it regularly, because it doesn't have any other options. So I always try to focus on those first.
And I guess just to talk about the flip side, Mark and I already determined what the correct answer is, and I have no question about that. But also, just if I didn't have the Alaska miles, transferring 20,000 membership rewards to Hawaiian, and then you have to pay that stupid fee, whatever the few cents is per point.
Yeah.
But that's essentially $200 worth of points, maybe a little bit more than that for a $300 flight. So it still actually makes sense from a redemption perspective. Believe it or not, I've never flown Hawaiian Airlines direct to Vegas. The only time I've ever flown Hawaiian Airlines is within Hawaii on inter-island flights. So every other time I've flown Alaska a bunch of times from West Coast cities, American a bunch of times. It's always so expensive to do Vegas. But this time the flights are all expensive. So it's just like, yeah, let's do it. And that would be nice. It's going to be nice to just land in Vegas without a connection.
You got to do the 80K lie flat, man. That's what you got to do on
it's available
Hawaiian.
Too. It's available too. I was so tempted. But it's such a short flight. It's a 6-hour flight.
For some people, that's too long. But yeah, I agree. I mean, we flew back, and I think coming back, at least for me, going west to east is always easier. And when we flew back Honolulu direct into Detroit. and we did it on Delta, and it was in economy, and it was the 242. So it was me and a kid, and then my wife and a kid, like back to back rows, and that was enough space because you had the child next to you. You weren't cramped in there. I wasn't sitting next to a stranger, and it was perfectly fine. Like I didn't mind it at all. I was kind of surprised. I find that flight better. Now going out, I probably would have been a little bit more exhausted. We did the American lie flat, and it was nice to get like that nap. So when you landed, you could hit the ground running a bit because the time difference is so much different. We're flying back. It was kind of like, oh, it was like 2 in the morning Hawaiian time, but it was 8 a.m. Detroit time. I would have normally been up until 12 or 1 anyway. So it wasn't terrible.
Yeah, the only time I've flown first class to Hawaii, I've done it a few times, but it's all been on like domestic upgrades and, recliner seats, never on the lie flat. But it does seem like more of the wide bodies are going to Hawaii. Even United, just looking at their flight, the flight that we're doing from LA to Honolulu is on a 777, which I didn't realize they were flying from West Coast cities to Hawaii. They're wide bodies. Obviously, one of the big changes, I think, over the last 10 years has been flying wide bodies and lie flat seats from the East Coast. I think the flight from Honolulu to Vegas is blocked at 6 hours. So it's probably actually 5.5 hours of flight time. Not worth 4x the price for lie flat, especially if there's three of us. So I mean, it would be nice to try it out because it's always fun to do it. And Hawaiian Air would be a new experience, a new product, I guess, for me. But maybe next time.
Yeah, we had booked the 4 going into Las Vegas. Originally we were going to fly Hawaiian to Las Vegas, and then I was going to book a separate flight home. But for whatever reason, I couldn't find any decent prices. It was like $350 to $400 one way out of Vegas was the cheapest, and I ended up flying the Delta flight direct was like 5 something. So it didn't make any sense to spend those miles flying to Vegas and then spending almost the same amount of money to fly home from there. I'd rather do the nonstop. It just was better. So I canceled the Hawaiian, had the 80K sitting there. I'm like, what am I going to do with these, man? Like, so I started thinking on my way back from Asia this winter. I was like, maybe I'll just fly from Japan to Hawaii on Hawaiian. I think it's 130K in lie flat and spend a night in like Hawaii, relax for a bit, and then fly home from there. And then Alaska came to the rescue, and I was like, okay, I don't need to worry about this anymore.
That is a nice way to break it up. We did Hawaii in between the US and Japan earlier this year, and I loved it. I loved the way it broke up the time zones. I would absolutely do that again. I liked doing it going there, but certainly it's a good thing. And it's like an 8-ish hour flight from Tokyo to Honolulu. So it breaks it up very nicely, especially the East Coast. But I mean, it would certainly be a lot quicker for you flying direct. I imagine it's 12 hours or something direct from Tokyo to Detroit, something in that range.
Yeah, I think it's right in that range. Most likely I would have flown into Chicago if we had booked that way home, but I ended up getting space on Singapore. So I'm just doing that terrible long flight that I'm going to be so stressed about. Right. I'm so not Jersey, looking forward to it at all. JFK to Singapore, and it's like 17 hours. I'm just dreading it, every minute of it. You can drink, eat, sleep, wake up, eat, drink, sleep, wake up, and you're still like 4 hours away. It's going to be terrible.
Hey, I did it SFO to Singapore, so it's about 45 minutes less, I think. So it's a little over 16 hours with a 4-year-old. It was a lot of fun. It is a long flight. I mean, I've never been so ready to be off of a plane. It's not because it wasn't comfortable. Seat was great. Service was great. Food was great. I don't think we had good internet. I mean, I think there was internet on the plane, but it cost money, so no internet. 16 hours. Just think about working 2 full-time shifts back to back while you're still sitting on an airplane. There's only so many movies. There's only so many things you can do before you're like, I need to get outside and walk around. But if you have to be stuck on a plane, Singapore Airlines is about as good as it gets.
Yeah, I mean, I wish there was like a bar or a shower. Like these are the times that I wish I had those things on this flight, because I think a shower would be nice to just kind of like break it up a bit, kind of wake you up a little bit. And the bar area, just a place to like walk around and lounge and not be kind of confined so much, gives you a little bit more space. So I think that's where the Middle East carriers really get it right. And I wish and I'm not looking forward to how hot it's going to be on that plane, man. I'm bringing the USB fan, but it's going to be so hot.
Singapore, I've had hit or miss. The Japanese airlines, almost always so hot. Other Asian airlines like Cathay Pacific, I find that they're pretty good. The Korean airlines are usually hot, but like in their premium cabins, often they have vents, which is really nice. So you can blow the air on you. But Singapore, I've had hit or miss. I've had really hot flights, but I think you'll love it. The service is great. and it's certainly an experience. You're talking about showers and all this hoity-toity stuff. So let's talk about the best hotel breakfast. Uh, this guy Sam Reed, who's a big YouTuber, did this comparison of hotel breakfasts. And now let's start off. He's not talking about the fancy hotels. Um, I kind of like was watching this and remembering my life of travel kind of growing up, and it was always these seedy motels with these terrible continental breakfasts.
Yep.
And so it was interesting to kind of see this. So he's not talking about full service hotels, fancy breakfasts that we get free with our status. He's talking about limited service hotels that you can go to that include a breakfast, everywhere from Super 8 on the low end to like Fairfield by Marriott on the high end. And he went through all of these. I want to start, Mark, because when he went to like the Red Roof Inns and the Super 8s, the really bad ones, first off, you could tell the properties weren't nice. I've stayed in plenty of motels like that. I could almost smell like the continental
Yeah.
breakfast room because they all kind of smell the same. And like it just brought back so many memories of those types of motels and those very kind of seedy continental breakfasts.
I stayed in a lot of them, with work because I was stationed over in Detroit while we were living on the west side, and they were just kind of like, "Here's your budget, book a hotel room," and I did that for months and months, and it was like, one time a guy had to work late. We were there till like 10 o'clock, so I was like, "I'll get you a room. You live like 40 minutes away." So we ended up both staying at the Motel 6 and stuff. Stayed at Super 8s were actually no, not Super 8s. Red Roof Inns were actually probably the best of the low class, I'd say. But yeah, the breakfast was always kind of the same grab and go. Days Inn. I stayed at Days Inn in Cadillac, Michigan for 3 straight months. And I never even went into the breakfast because it was so depressing. So yeah, I've been in lots of those low end breakfasts, but I love that the one is like, what time's the breakfast? And she's like, "Oh, the Waffle House is right in the parking lot. You should just go there."
Yeah, exactly. They don't want that. Like one just had like a gallon of milk, a lot of the like stale bagels and stuff. But as you go up, I think there's some surprises here. Now, for some reason, he didn't do Hyatt Place or Hyatt House, so
Which
that's
there
not on the list
sucks.
here.
It
So
sucks.
everybody in the miles and point spaces, they're walking off. They're pissed off because this isn't fair. But I was surprised by Comfort Inn and Suites. They did pretty good. Considering we kind of joke around them, and I know Benji stayed in the new one in Orlando, which has already been decomfort suites. I don't know, it was too nice maybe, but some of their new properties are pretty nice, even under this brand. It did pretty good. Best Western, it's funny when we did our road trip last year up the coast of California all the way up to Washington, basically all the way up Highway 1. We stayed at this Best Western just across the border in Southern Oregon, and it was one of those towns where there was a bunch of motels. There wasn't a lot of choices, and the breakfast there was like a handmade biscuits and gravy with like handmade scrambled eggs, like home cook home granny style, like the lady who owned the motel made them. It was the best breakfast I've ever had at a Best Western. It did okay, but I think I want to ask the people out there before we say what the answer is. If you had to like take into account, he was taking into account room rates, overall value. What do you think would be the best hotel breakfast? Because I had a guess going in, and I was right.
Yeah, I was on the same level as you, or had the same idea, and it's actually like my favorite breakfast. Unless you're at a high end Hyatt and you sit down, yeah, even like some of those are just the same type of buffet that you get at these mid tier properties. I mentioned to you before the show, Embassy Suites is one that always has a really good breakfast, but that for whatever reason, Embassy Suites, I never think of it as a upper tier brand, but it does seem to price up that way a little bit, but it never it feels the same as like a Hampton Inn or a Holiday Inn or those, like it's a small step above, but nothing like great. But I guess that's like the next level. Would be like Embassy Suites and Hyatt Regency and stuff like that.
So on his list of limited service, he did the overall highest ranked breakfast, not accounting for price or anything, was Fairfield by Marriott. And he said because they had a lot of gluten-free items, they had a lot more fresh food items. I looked at things like oat milk and stuff like that. Very comparable, I would say, to a nicer Hyatt Place. And you're paying a higher rate. The rate on that was significantly higher than some of the other ones. So his takeaway when he went through all of them, and here's the brand: Super 8, Red Roof Inn, Days Inn, Quality Inn, Comfort Inn and Suites, Best Western, True by Hilton, Hampton Inn, Holiday Inn Express, Fairfield by Marriott. He came to the same conclusion. I could have just told him before the whole video that Holiday Inn Express has the best breakfast in that whole genre category. Cinnamon rolls, they got fresh eggs. It's not anything to write home about. And he didn't rank it as the overall best, but for price, you can't beat it.
Yeah, I really like Holiday Inn Expresses, and if I'm staying like along the highway or something in a smaller town, I usually lean towards that. And I've talked about previously how I really think IHG points are undervalued a bit. A lot of times I'll look at hotels and IHG will be 30K at the same, exit on the highway, and Hilton will be 50K or whatever. I actually really like Hampton Inn breakfast, at least if it's a newer Hampton Inn. There's some old crappy ones, but usually Hampton Inn has a pretty solid breakfast. So I would have put those two up there. Fairfield Inn felt very similar to, Holiday Inn, but he was very big on the gluten-free stuff. As somebody that doesn't care about that, I would still lean towards Holiday Inn because of the cinnamon rolls. I mean, it's tough to beat that. The cinnamon rolls really push it over.
But they don't have oat milk at Holiday Inn. No, I agree with you. The cinnamon rolls are the defining factor.
And a
They are
pancake
so
machine.
good.
It's got both.
Yeah. And it's interesting, like going through this, watching him go to all these places, highly suggest this video. He did a great job. He got permission from the hotels he wasn't staying at. He got permission to eat the breakfast, however he did that. But, you get to see like the various
so
levels
weird.
Well, because, people, how people come at you on YouTube. So he has to disclaim that so that people aren't saying, oh, you're just sneaking in, eating these breakfasts. But you get to see the different qualities and different vibes there. But, everything from, you start out like he makes a line where like if you go over the $40, the very low end things, now you're going to get from a continental breakfast to more, maybe you'll get some hot options, and you'll definitely get a waffle maker or pancake maker. And then, he actually does some data analysis here to say, okay, where should you spend your money? How much should you spend to get the optimal breakfast? Now, is anybody, rating their entire motel trips around what's the best breakfast to get?
Yes.
I don't know.
All miles and points, people. Yeah. Too much.
No, because they all have the fancy breakfast, But
yeah.
sometimes, yeah.
I'm just like, people overvalue breakfast so much. And I mean, certain places when it's like you're a resort captive and it's very expensive, like Hawaii or something. Yes, it saves you a ton. Or Baha Mar in Bahamas. Yeah, sure. I get it. But like usually you can get something from the local better breakfast and it'll cost you, $10, $15. You can go to a Waffle House and get a better level breakfast for like 10, 15 bucks. Like there's options out there that I think it's, they're like, oh, I saved $150 on breakfast. Well, I mean, what'd you really save if you went out to eat? You can go to McDonald's. McDonald's has a great breakfast, especially if you, were out late, tying one off the night before. McDonald's hits the spot better than most. It'll cost you like $9. I don't know. People overvalue it big time.
Oh, they definitely do, and that's just the way of the world and all of that. But it was interesting to see just the different things they throw on, different toppings for your waffles as you get more expensive, different waffle batter mixes like a blueberry or a cinnamon waffle instead of a regular one. And these breakfasts can be good for kids because I know in our case I'm not really a huge breakfast person, so unless it's a fancy place with a fancy breakfast, I'm not eating breakfast. But my daughter wants to eat breakfast. She eats breakfast every day. So, even just having a waffle maker, something like that, or having, I think having real eggs is a big deal. That's Hyatt Place to me
Place
I would
powdered
rank
eggs.
Hyatt. This is the thing is, had I done this video and it was
Yeah.
Hyatt's stupid powdered eggs, I would have done this video and I would have put Hyatt like below everyone else who had real eggs. That's how, I don't get it, but that's my hill to die on. And I don't even eat the eggs, so what the hell do I care? But I would eat them, I guess, if they were real eggs. Anyway, this is fascinating. One of those nerdy hotel nerd things that we love to talk about.
I probably would have slid Hyatt Place like in fourth or fifth, somewhere in there, below Hampton, below IHG, below Fairfield. And it's probably the most expensive of all those brands, which just shows. And now they're charging it some places, and it just shows how little effort they put into their breakfast for something that should be, Hyatt's supposed to be a little bit better than everybody else. So they definitely could use some work, at least at Hyatt Place. Hyatt houses, sometimes they have like an omelet chef and stuff like that. So I won't throw them into the same bunch. Hyatt House might have come in first if you get one of those locations, but the price probably would have been, $30 to $40 more than a Fairfield.
I'll put this out there to anybody. I think most of the Hyatt houses removed their omelet guys, and I wonder if they brought them back. I haven't stayed it a lot lately.
I haven't
Many
either.
people out there know, because that was really a differentiator of that level of hotel, was having an omelet at breakfast, which you don't expect at the limited service sort of thing. And so, I'd be interested to see if they brought that back, because they cut it out pretty much across the board during COVID. And good stuff. And hotel nerds, if you are a hotel nerd, and especially if you grew up going to crappy motels like me, you will enjoy this video. even if you don't do breakfast. I don't know. Great stuff.
Do it at 1.75 speed. Perfect. It moves along.
I did it at 2, but
I couldn't. Yeah,
Mark
2 is
processes
a little bit
things
too much.
slower. It's okay.
Oh, says the guy that struggled to get words out of his mouth earlier.
I don't know what you're talking about. None of that's in this show. What are you talking about? So let us know what you guys think about anything we talked about today. Hotel breakfast. What's your favorite motel breakfast? Should I transfer more membership rewards, or should I just book out of my Alaska account? Mark's Southwest, all the stuff coming up for his trips and stuff. Leave a comment. We do 2 shows a week. We do our 20-minute travel news show on Wednesdays. We do this podcast every Wednesday. We do this podcast every Monday. You can find us in any podcast app, YouTube, everywhere. Leave comments, subscribe, do all of it. I'm on a roll, and I'm not messing up. See? Thanks for watching. Talk to you next time.
Yeah. Wednesday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. Let's go.